Opener.
Welcome back to the Gud Performance Podcast. Otto Zaccardo here, joined by Troy Shallow and Brandon Jetter, where we talk about the most fascinating and exciting topics in sports performance, athlete mentality, and inspiration and motivation. Cutting through the BS and giving you real, groundbreaking stories and first-person accounts of what it's like to be and live a life in sports. There we go. Off the dome.
Go off, King.
I should really write these. Okay, what's up? Gud Performance Podcast. Troy has a topic that actually we both had in mind that we didn't even talk about, but we have a topic that should be pretty interesting, not just to our athletes that train, but we've seen it a lot. So let her rip, Troy. Hit us with your prompt, and we'll go from there.
Something I really wanted to go over, and selfishly, because I don't know enough about it, and I want to learn more about it. And I think Otto does a fucking unbelievable job of prescribing a protocol to these people who come up with hamstring pulls and strains. And I think he does, like, I've seen the shit he does with these kids and how he works them through, a hamstring pull and strain. And I think he does the best fucking job in the area from everyone else I've seen and what he does. And it's just phenomenal. And I have never pulled my hamstring. I've never gone through that. And yes, like we joked about before, it's probably because I was never fast enough. Like I've never gone through that. So I've never had to rehab from a hamstring pull. I've never, that has never been a thing for me. So I admittedly don't know as much about that as I want to. And I want to learn from you guys who have rehabbed from your hamstrings. And, we get guys who pull their hamstrings and strain their hamstrings, and it seems to be like within the first 3 to 4 weeks of their training when it will happen. Like very early on in their training is when I notice that it kind of happens. But it also and then I look at it, and every time it happens as the coach, I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did I do wrong in their training that led them to the hamstring pull? Well, there's 1,000 factors that go into an injury. Like, it's not just this one set thing. And I'm looking at all the program, like, we do this for hamstring. We get the insertion point. We get the origin. We're hitting every part of the fucking hamstring. Why did they pull it? And it's just something I really want to learn more about. And Otto does a fucking phenomenal job with it. And I'm curious to hear what Brandon has to say about it too. And I think it will resonate a lot with our guys because hamstring pulls happen often.
We're on the same wavelength. I wanted to talk about it too because I don't think I find like I end up repeating myself a lot to the guys. And I was telling Brandon before we even started recording that we typically see it with like new guys or guys coming right back from the season where they want to go full tilt. And then it's like there it goes, like a little tweak. It's fine. Like we haven't had anything catastrophic ever happen, which is probably a testament to well-rounded training and programming. And guys, I think no one reads the art. I wrote an article ages ago about posterior chain training and hamstring stuff. But the whole goal, if you're in sports and you're a fast athlete, odds are if you compete long enough, you're going to pull a hamstring. You're going to strain it. You're going to tweak it. It's going to happen. Troy, you said you hadn't had it. Great. You've also shattered your ankle and a million other surgeries. So,
I could tell you exactly how to rehab from ankle surgery.
Yeah, you might have skipped by on no hamstring strain, but I don't think I would trade places with you. So you're going to get hurt eventually, but hamstrings particularly are, I think, something that can be they can be quite the setback, but you can also have a lot of control in your own preventative measures. Like it's very much on the individual to kind of understand their body. It's really, you can't just put the blinders on and train and just expect everything to be perfect. And I'm doing everything that's explicitly written out for me, so I'm not going to get injured. Like there's going to be some sort of oversight, whether it's on your care outside of the gym, outside of the program, or the coach's load management. But usually that's not the case because that's what coaches spend all their time doing is load management and making sure that they're trained. Well, decent coaches are, at least. And there's a lot of people want to point into causality as to, oh, you pulled your hamstring because of this, or this guy's pulling his hamstring because of, his pelvic tilt and relative range of motion. And I don't think that's really helpful for anyone because, one, no one really is going to understand. It's the same thing that you always say, Troy, is you can't use elaborate words to explain to athletes intricate biomechanics of like why your body is doing this. Nobody cares. You want to get stronger and perform better. Like, we get that. That's our job, to take that information and then make it easily digestible for our athletes. So they're saying, that's all I need to do? Yes, do it. Good. But when it comes to hamstrings, it's like pelvic tilt, load management, hamstring strength, by like running mechanics. There's so many different things that go into it. But I guess to answer it first, we can go over the different types of hamstring injuries, and then we'll go into protocol. So typically when you strain a hamstring or pull a hamstring, it's a grade, 1, 2, or 3. 1, not a big deal. It's a muscle tweak. Guys do it with their shoulders, their lats, their quads, their hip flexors, their calves. A grade 1, it's just a tweak. You're not going to provide like a causality factor where it's like, this happened because of this. You were training really hard, you tweaked a muscle, it happens. And I use this for grade 1, even grade 3. We haven't. Grade 3 is covered in bruising, like you're sidelined for a while. We've never had anything like that. I don't even know if I've technically had a grade 3. I've had pretty bad bruising, but I don't think it's ever been like significant tearing. And I've never seen anyone tear their hamstring off the bone, either playing with them or coaching them. So that's extremely rare. That might be something that's more extended, poor programming or training, but we rarely see that. But typically, and we give this to everybody that has a soft tissue injury, if you get an injury training or playing a sport and it's a soft tissue, the first thing you need to do is not freak out. And we have a 10-day rule. I probably got that from a trainer, either in college or from rugby, but the 10-day rule where you wait 10 days and you do not lose your mind about it. You're chilling out. You're mindful of what happened. Your leg doesn't feel 100%. Maybe it's your upper body. You're mindful of what happened for 10 days. In the first 48 hours, you're just going to chill out. So the tissue just got damaged. You're gonna let it sit. Usually say compression. You can ice it to manage pain and stop like internal bleeding, which results in bruising. But typically just compression and chill out for those first 48 hours if you get hurt. That's just the tissue's damaged. You're not gonna fix it. It's just not gonna happen. So chill out. Day off. You got hurt, you were pushing really hard, take a day off, chill out. After that, we're still in the 10-day rule. So even a week is less than 10 days. So that week, you're basically in like management phase. We're seeing how much bruising there is, what your range of motion is, where your strength is. And this is the part that I see our guys bounce back really fast from little soft tissue tweaks, is because they're so trained like evenly with their hamstrings, with the insertion point, posterior chain. Also for hip flexors and stuff, we do, not to toot our own horn, I think we do a good job of training all parts of athleticism, but because of that, guys can come back faster. So you don't want to baby yourself and say, oh, I can't do this because I'm injured. It's more so injuries are kind of a part of the game. When you get hurt, you need to come back faster. After those first 48 hours, we assess strength. Usually, if you've been training well and been pushing hamstring, we're talking about hamstrings, but for all muscles, but if you've been training your hamstrings hard and well and all different pieces of the posterior chain, you usually tend to retain a pretty decent amount of strength and range of motion, which is good. So then we're just trying to ease in the tissue. You have to give it time to heal because it's like the fibers have torn a little bit depending on where it is. Give it time to heal. Then we go back into breaking up the fibers and re-strengthening and getting our range of motion back. And then it's a slow return to run. We want to start moving, but we want to be very conscious about how quickly we're going back into those top speed, sprint volumes or maximal effort in sprinting. But the key is with hamstrings specifically is staying on top of them, because once you have a hamstring injury, especially if you're earlier in your athletic career, that is a sign that you're probably more prone for hamstrings. I have had hamstring injuries since I was in high school in varying degrees of strength and ranges of motion. So, and I've had them by minor tweaks and big pulls where I like couldn't walk on them. But that doesn't mean that
You had the fake hamstring at one point.
Florida State, I have the picture. I needed to play, and they took the rubber band. I remember I told that to another sports specialist person, and they just laughed and shook their head and said, "No, that's ridiculous. How would you do that?" And I was like,
"Explain more in depth."
So they took a belt. This is one. I thought this was a genius way to play through a hamstring strain. Like genius. I thought it was awesome. It's not optimal, but you can.
Neither is running down on kickoff at 20 miles an hour right into someone, but who, you know.
Back when they had the wedge, that's how I earned my time, splitting the wedge. Real football, not this mamby-pamby
Yeah,
stuff.
not this spread offense, air raid West Coast shit that Brandon's people ruined out in the West Coast.
Football anymore, No, they took I had a pull, I forget when it was. I think I blew it out against Clemson running down on punt. And then I came back for the Florida State game, and they took the trainers took like a belt from like football pants, took it out, took one of those resistance bands, gave me a tape job around my heel and ankle, put the band like along the bottom of my foot and tied it up through the back of my leg and tied it to the belt. And then I had an ace wrap keeping it on my leg. So like,
a literal artificial hamstring.
I could straighten my leg and then it would bend itself. And I was able to play like on all the special teams for that game. And it was genius. It was honestly so sick. We could do it now. We don't have any type of injuries that get to that point. And also it's off-season training, so no one needs to play in a game. I thought that was really cool. And I still think that that's one of the best ways. If Tim Pike or Brad or Brandon, I think his name was Brandon too, my other trainer from Syracuse. If they're watching, you guys are geniuses for that. That's a very, very sick thing. I forget where they told me they learned it. Anyway, yeah, ask a trainer if they know how to do that if you ever are in season and that happens, because you can play through it. But what I was saying more so is returning to sport after a hamstring injury. You need to keep an eye on it, and it's a lot of due diligence on the athlete's part, which is, I think, is why hamstrings are really nagging injuries, is because with some injuries, like if you sprain your ankle or if you break a bone, a lot of it is just rest and you're waiting for, you go to PT, you go to your trainer and they'll fix it and it will get better with time and you won't really notice it again. But with hamstrings, I'd say more so than hip flexors or anything else like knee pain, if you kind of half-ass your recovery or you don't keep up that recovery and prep as you continue your career, it will come back, because it just will. Like the tissue's already slightly damaged. I know if I flex my hamstrings now, they're all warped. Like it's like when guys tear biceps, like their bicep always looks different for the rest of their life. It's the same type of thing. So you have that damage. So once you get one, you need to stay on top of it. And that's a big piece. And I think I was not great at it. The reason why I talk about it so much and I'm always on guys when they do end up with these little tweaks is because it happened to me so many times. I would have a hamstring injury. I'd fix it. I'd do a really good job. I'd come back, get back to full speed, back to hitting PRs, progressing my sprints, and then I'd forget about it. I'd slack off a little bit because, I'm back to full go. And then there would be some oversight on my part and it would happen again. Happened when I showed up for bobsled too, because it was a completely different movement.
Right.
I was doing my hamstring protocol that worked for all my flat surface stuff, but that's a much more elongated range of motion for pushing and bobsled, and had another snafu. So I got off track. After you come back to return to run,
you were talking about before that, you were talking about how if you're younger, you started having them in high school. You've had every basically type of hamstring strain. If you're younger, if it happens when you're younger, you're more prone to it.
Yeah. And don't go into the web of complexity of why you're prone to hamstrings. It's just what you are. Some people are better at reading, writing, math, science, whatever. Everyone has their own predispositions. Same thing with sports. Like you're good at some things, other things are harder for you. So don't look into that. But if you start having hamstring stuff early, you are more prone. You need to take it seriously, and it should be always in the back of your mind in terms of like prep, rehab. Even if you have a rest day, I'll have days where I don't train, but the one thing that I'll make sure I do is check in on my hammies, check in on my hips, make sure that everything's like moving well. Even if I can only have 5-10 minutes, like I'm doing work for that stuff, even if it's just PT. But soak up all the knowledge you can and how the hamstring works, because there are also different types of injury, right? If you have a low hamstring strain right by the tendons, right behind your knee, that one's it's not nearly as bad as if you have, I shouldn't say as bad. It's less dangerous than if you have a really high hamstring pull up by your glute, right? Like we had our guy Mason come back. Obviously he had a little tweak when he wasn't with us, off doing something. He's like, yeah, I did a short warm up and then like tweaked it doing straight leg skips or something like that. And we're like, ugh. But it was higher, right? So immediately I'm thinking, all right, we have to be really careful, because what you don't want is to have a higher being closer to your glute, a high hamstring strain, and then treat it, even if it's not severe, and treat it like nothing and just keep rolling through it, because that is when you really risk, detaching from that glute ham connection. And that is the catastrophic hamstring injury that you want to avoid at all costs. The lower it is, the easier it is to rehab and the faster you'll come back. The higher it is, the more careful you have to be. And same thing with the amount of bruising. The more bruising, you need more time. So depending on the severity after your first 48 hours, you need to that changes how you go through the 10-day rule. The 10-day rule is also there psychologically, so you're not losing your mind 10 days of training. And after 10 days, if it's a grade 2, you're already almost 2 weeks into your rehab. So it's really just another week of kind of returning to run. You're good to go. If it's a grade 1, some guys come back in a few days. Like it was really just a tweak and there's no issue, and they just kind of got scared or nervous. But yeah, it is a thing. And it does end athletic careers, because people get so freaked out about their hamstrings and they're like, yeah, I pulled my hamstring and now I'm done. Like I couldn't do it. It's like, no, you just had no idea how to come back. Either you didn't take the time to learn how to do it, or you didn't have a coach or trainer that knew how to properly come back. Because if hamstrings were the end of athletic careers, I would have retired a really long time ago.
Something we've noticed is that it happens typically earlier in the training phase. Do you guys know of any particular reason why that may be? Despite, in the weight room, they're extremely trained. Their hamstrings are very, very trained and efficient. And, 3-4 weeks into the training block, they go to sprint and they're only sprinting 20 or 30 yards and they pull their hamstring. It's like, what the hell?
Well, how much exposure did these guys have beforehand, especially if you're working primarily with football players? Is there only sprint exposure before running gassers? Have they ever done true acceleration, true max velocity work?
It's not even that much. I would say, like you said, Brandon, there's not enough exposure, so they haven't ran. Because you'll see a lot of the way to prevent hamstring stuff is running. And especially where we're at, it might be less common where you're at in California, Brandon, but
right.
Because of like the winter time, there is that period where if you're not sprinting in the winter, you don't have an activity to do, it's very easy to not run.
Right.
It's very easy to just kind of sit around and not run. But I would think it's just fatigue. It's just like guys trying to push too hard too soon, despite what we tell them, which is fine. It's a good problem to have. I'd rather have the guys that push too hard too soon and then, say, okay, we need to ease up. This is what happens when you don't listen to Coach Troy and Coach Otto about easing up and taking your time coming in. Like, it's okay. Like, you'll be fine. But yeah, I've seen that too. I don't think that it's something to work with. And nothing has been catastrophic. And even guys that go through it once, like, no one showed up to us with hamstring problems. We worked through them. And now if he tweaks his hamstring, he doesn't freak out. He's like, all right, yeah, like I took my foot off the gas. I wasn't that attentive. Like I'll go back through the thing and I'll be good to go. So I think a big part of the whole hamstring injury thing is more so getting over that psychological barrier of, I'm toast. I'm ruined. On that 9th day when you're almost better, but you realize you haven't been trained, you haven't been full speed sprinting for a week, and your main number one goal this offseason is to get faster. There's too much outside, external thoughts where it's like, I'm not getting faster. Like, this is going to ruin me. I'm never going to come back. And guys need to get away from that. Like, that's not helpful to you. And it's also not reality and it's not true. So it's like any other injury, but you do need to be smarter about it. And you just need to keep doing it. It's the same thing as, I think it shows up differently because you don't feel your hamstrings like you do like knee pain. Like when we get guys with knee pain and we tell them what to do and it goes away and then their knee pain comes back, but they can still kind of push through it. They say, Coach Troy, my knee's hurting. And then what does Coach Troy say? Have you been doing this stuff for your knees? Nah. Well, try that. But hamstrings, you don't feel the hamstring until you strain it. So there's no like early warning sign of, I haven't been doing, my activation stuff or my proper prep for my hammies. It kind of hurts. I think it's going to get pulled in the next 3 days. No, you don't get that. You don't get it until
it
boom,
happens.
It happens. Yeah. And I mean, I fell victim to that too, because you don't think of it. You're just like, and then once it happens, you realize, I wasn't doing X, Y, and Z for the past couple of weeks because I didn't think I needed it because I didn't feel any different and I was running really great. I didn't do it, but it's still there. So that's a great topic. I think it's good to cover it.
Brandon, thoughts on all that?
Yeah, you're a track guy, so you probably have a lot of
I have a lot
insight.
of thoughts. If I start going too long, just let me know.
I mean, I went for like 18 minutes on
yeah, you gave me a good time span.
You're all.
It's great. I wanted to hear it.
First things first, I think Otto is right. Like when it comes to the psychological aspect, I bet like if you were to pull your hamstring now, you'd be like, that sucks, but like this is fine. I know how to manage this. I remember. Well, I'll just start with the stories. That's the easiest way to explain it. First time that I ever injured my hamstring, my sprint biomechanics are very like hamstring dominant, just naturally. Full disclosure, even though I coach track, this is a do as I say, not as I do thing. My biomechanics are pretty fucked up. I'm trying to fix them myself, but I do have a tendency to injure my hamstring because of that. I think with how much volume I've done a pretty good job of avoiding hamstring injuries. First time I ever heard it was in junior college, which is like the Wild West. I remember I pulled it, and my coach was like, "Oh, just suck it up. It's probably a cramp." And I had never pulled a hamstring. It was like a grade 1. It wasn't a terrible pull, right? I like felt a pop, and I was like, "Ow, this hurts. It hurts to run. It hurts to do anything right now." And he's like, "You know what?" He's like, "You're just cramping. You probably didn't drink enough water." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I remember like immediately like the next day, I went to like a super like cheap sus massage place and was like, "Can you guys just massage my hamstring?" Absolute worst thing you can do. 24 hours within, like Otto said, 48 to 72 hours. You're pretty much doing nothing. You're pretty much just resting it. Back then, the first thing I immediately did was go and get a massage. Probably made the tissue even worse. Probably literally separated it more. Didn't know any better. That was in like October of my sophomore year. I was in junior college. January of that year, this goes back to, you can say all the things about biomechanics and stuff like that. You kind of get lost in the sauce. I mean, that is a factor, but I think we tend to overrate how much of a factor it was. I ended up tearing it. I got a grade 3. We had our intra squad. We had like a time trial, and I was doing my lifting like outside of the program because it was kind of like a shit show. And I had front squatted super heavy that morning. I'm not too genius moment here. Went and ran like 100, pulled it, felt like I got shot. It was terrible. It was bruised. Back then, I had no idea. I kind of psychologically got into that thing because it was January. I had the season coming up, and I was like, dude, I need to get out of here. I was at like a super ratchet junior college. I just wanted nothing to do but leave. And so it pretty much became a protocol of how fast can I get back from tearing my hamstring, which I've never done before, to being able to run by March, April, May when the season is, so that I can get the times that I need to transfer out of here. With a grade 3 hamstring, that is really, really pushing the timetable. So I want to give a shout out. You're talking about trainers. I went back to 2 trainers that I knew from high school, Russ Dunning and Aaron Crouch out in Sacramento, California. Shout out to them. They mostly work with MMA fighters, especially back then. They were working with Team Alpha Male in Sacramento, so like Uriah Faber, people like that. But I came to them and I was like, dude, my hamstring is destroyed. I need to get back as soon as possible. What did I do? A lot of it I did myself when it came. I mean, I could spend hours talking about like this disastrous junior college season and all the crazy things that went on, but I pretty much programmed myself on the way back. What did I do? Same exact things that, that Troy and Otto have talked about. Reintroduce things progressively slower. The first running I did was tempo running, like very, very light effort tempo running. Did a lot of hill sprints, progressing the intensity, progressing, the angle on the hills, just so that I could get a little bit of speed stimulus too. And then, yeah, my trainers, like Russ, introduced me to BFR training, which was miserable. I had never done it before. I showed up one day and he hooked it up on my hamstring. I explained to him, I was like, dude, I have like a month, I have a month or two to get back. He hooks it up to my leg, instantly feel like, an insane pump in my hamstring, hands me a heavy ass kettlebell, and he's like, you're going for an AM rep for like a minute. It was miserable. We did a lot of stuff like that. We did a lot of kettlebell swings, a lot of like BFR training. Would I do that traditionally? Probably not, but in this case we had a very short time span. But yeah, pretty much, had Russ in them introducing all sorts of things, made sure that diet was locked in, high protein intake, tons of sleep, tons of recovery, no outside stuff like alcohol, anything like that. Like I said, programming wise, did tons of hill sprints, did tons of tempo, pretty much trained myself back because our coach was kind of MIA at the time. I came back. This is where the psychological aspect comes. So I come back first meet. I run an 11:3, and I remember being like, oh, I'm cooked. I'm like, this is like, I'm done. I remember like literally I had a terrible meet, did bad in all my events. I remember I came home, I sat at the dinner table with my dad, and I was like, I think I'm done. I was like, what's next? I was like, do I join the military? My dad was like, you could go coach, you could join the military. Like, there's so many other options. And I was like depressed. I was so depressed. I came back and I did so bad. And like for literally, so I had this meet it was like a Wednesday or something. They had just thrown me in. They're throwing me in any meet I could find because it was so late in the season because it was, end of April. So I was like, man, I was so depressed. I had 48 hours where I did nothing after the meet. We had a meet on Saturday, coincidentally at UC Davis. And I was like, I'm just going to go to that meet, come back, see what happens. I did a bunch of events back then. I came back, I was hurdling, I got second. I was like, oh, what the fuck? Super confused. My hamstring super wrapped up. Came back in the 100, ended up winning the 100 at the meet. It was just like a decent time, like maybe an 11 flat, 10-9, I can't remember. Point being, I went from 11-3 to 10-7 in about 2.5 weeks, which is absolutely insane progression. It doesn't make any sense, but well, it kind of makes sense because I had the general prep done. Ended up hurting my hamstring again, which was an inevitability, but rehabbed it back, came back, 2 weeks, super wrapped up, ran at the state meet, ended up, running fast enough to get some looks and transfer out. What were the biggest things? Like I said, just progressively, one, don't stop training. Yeah, maybe in the first 48 to 72 hours. You guys know this. Upper body lifting, frankly, is great when you have a lower extremity injury. You're getting the hormonal response. You're staying somewhat conditioned. You might have to modify it. You might have to do like bench, legless bench press, but you can definitely upper body lift, get the hormonal response. So don't really change your upper body training drastically. But a lot of people, and you guys probably see this a lot, I know you've mentioned it with ACL injuries, a lot of people just completely shut it down. Very bad decision. That's when you start to build up the scar tissue. That's when you start to see repeats of the injury. Like I said, I tore my hamstring bad. I had a little bit of tweaks after, but I put so much, pressure on it. Long term, have not really had hamstring injuries despite the bad tear. Why do I think that is? Like I said, didn't stop training. As soon as I could, started doing, very light, like tempo, like jog a curve, 60% on the straight type of thing, and started introducing hill sprints, things that I would do now because I've had hamstring injuries since. Normal progression might look like back extension, eventually progressing into like a glute ham raise, eventually into partial Nordic, and then, by the time you're fully healed, maybe a full Nordic. You just have to progress the injury. Don't give up exposure to it. The more severe that it is, and you probably see the severity a little bit less in football guys. You tend to see grade 3 a little bit more in track athletes because it tends to happen at like max velocities. It's happening about, 60, 70 meters into a race. You're very, very seldom getting that level of exposure in football. But if you have a grade 2 or grade 3, you got to make sure you prevent scar tissue buildup. That was a big one for me. So that off season after I tore my hamstring was best off season of my life, by the way. It was like the happiest I've ever been in my life. My girlfriend hates when I say that, but all I did was posterior chain, like strengthen my posterior chain. I was deadlifting heavy. But yeah, like you got to break up the scar tissue. Manual therapy is good for that. If you end up having a severe injury, manual therapy, ultrasound, anything to break up that scar tissue, that becomes more of a focus the more severe injury is. But I think the biggest thing is, honestly, and you guys know this, but you still see a lot of people avoid it. You can't stop fully training. You need some degree of exposure. I think a 3 to 4 out of 10 on the pain scale is usually a pretty good radar for where you want to push it and not push over. But you got to keep the upper body training. You got to keep the core training. You have to keep training those other elements, not just for the conditioning factor, but frankly for the hormonal response. But it's not the end of the world. Everyone's first hamstring injury, they think it's the end of the world because they've never experienced it before, and it sucks. Different injuries have different, you guys know, as football players, you guys know this better than everyone, like anyone. Certain injuries, like you can kind of ignore. Hamstring is like, it's frustrating. I think the reason why it's so psychologically hard is it's like, wow, I can't even walk. You know what I mean? When it's severe, it feels like you can't do anything. If you have a wrist injury, like, you can still work around that a little bit more. But the psychological element's huge, especially with youth athletes. If they've never had it before, you guys probably see it a little bit more with football players because they probably haven't experienced a hamstring injury until they really start doing harder, sprint training. But yeah, that psychological aspect's huge. It's not the end of the world. Otto said, I promise, at some point you're probably, especially if you're a skill position player, if you're a defensive back, if you're a receiver, at some point you're going to have a hamstring injury. I can say, as a track athlete, you 100% will, no matter what. It's going to happen eventually. It's not the end of the world. I've seen tons of people let it be the end of the world. It was almost the end of my world. If you let that happen, you'll never have an athletic career. That's not just on the athletes. Coaches too need to realize that hamstring injuries are an inevitability and they need to be a little bit more patient, I think, with it. But yeah, I mean, that summarizes my view on it. It's definitely something I'm super familiar with, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately now.
No, I think that's fortunate. I think that's something that, one of the things I had was about what we're trying to build with our athletes in the gym. Something that seems to get lost that maybe we take for granted is kind of your lived experience in terms of going through it, because it is one thing, we say this with training, right? It's one thing to read a book about strength and conditioning principles. It's another thing to have been clocking in every day with wanting nothing more than to get bigger and stronger and better. Same thing with coming back from injuries. It's one thing to say, well, this is what the science says on the recovery protocol for this type of hamstring, but it's another deal to have lived it and done a few different types of injuries. Same thing with shoulder and elbow pain, coach, or low back pain is one that we get all the time, which is usually, and most of the time, they're not that severe. It's the same thing with hamstrings. It's very rare when we get super severe ones, but it is two things that I thought of when you were talking, Brandon, is one, something that I recall is guys train their squat and pressing, quad dominant exercises, really, really hard. I think we've done a good job of emphasizing Nordics, heavy RDLs, stuff where we're really training our hamstrings really hard. We do a lot of it, but you need to have the same type of intent with that posterior chain development. Same thing with back and hips. That is the engine of an athlete. Nobody is going to hit their PRs in sprint time and anything from having big quads. Some guys have big quads, some guys don't, but the driver for that elite performance is glutes, hamstrings, hips. That's what it is. You actually don't need super massive, big, strong quads. It's sick if you have them and you have a big squat, but that's not going to hit me adding a few centimeters or inches to my quads and getting a more muscle packed onto my quads is not going to help me jump higher, run faster, or be more explosive, at this point in the game. And usually that's the case with a lot of guys. You're going to see more of a tangible improvement in your overall athleticism by developing your glutes, hamstrings, and low back than you are squatting more. Some guys, that's not the case. We have some guys that just need to friggin' do some GPP and get themselves stronger, but that's another thing. The other thing is rest. We are all about going hard all the time. And Troy and I have had a couple conversations just in the last couple of weeks with guys telling them, hey, you need to rest because, and again, pick your poison. We'd much rather have guys that are going 7 days a week with no rest because they just are dogs and they're in the grind, man, no days off. I love that attitude. However, what we're trying to do when we train, when we're trying to really move the needle in terms of performance, improving your athletic ability, you need to rest. You need to rest. Even if you think it's nothing, you're not exerting yourself. But if you go 7 days a week and say Saturdays are linear speed day and Sunday you're going to the field and doing an hour and a half of drills, or say you're working with another trainer that's maybe not strength and conditioning, but you're doing position work with them, or you have some other workouts with your AAU team or your sports team, and you're doing those 3 times a week on top of what we're doing, on top of what whoever your strength and conditioning coach is doing. Now your load is not managed the way your coach thinks it is. Even if you think, oh, I shouldn't tell them this, you're not giving your body time to recover. And that is when soft tissue injuries set in, where it's yeah, I can push through it, but you only can until you can't, and then something goes. right? Like, yeah, you're a dog, but now because you push so hard, dude, you lose 14 days of training, like max effort now. Like, sorry, but that's what happens. Like, you break. You want to bend and not break, and you need to recognize that. That's why we do take a lot of measurements with sprinting and jumping and occasionally grip strength too, is you do need to have some sort of metric that's telling you I'm not 100%. Like I'm spread too thin. Like I need to dial it back. That is a job. That's what we try to do as coaches, is when to tell guys to dial back, because I'd prefer to have guys, hey, take it easy, because if you need to tell someone to push harder, then it's like, all right, now we got to light a fire inside them, which we don't want to do, but sometimes you have to. But you do need to rest. Like that is I guess the caveat of training really, really hard, is you do need to have time when you're just not doing anything physical and you are letting your body fully recover. You're just eating protein, you're eating good food, hydrating, maybe stretching, hopefully doing some mobility, and just stepping away from training, because you can't make progress going 7 days a week for months at a time. It's something I
tell the kids that train really hard and are like freaks, like Nolan and Chase. They train really hard. They're really strong. They're really explosive. They're really fast. And when they're there, they train really hard. I tell them, with great power comes great responsibility. And you need to fucking take really good care of yourself. You need to be super responsible with what you do, because you are so much more powerful than and explosive compared to everyone else. Like that means there's a chance that shit's gonna go for you. Like something's gonna go because you're so much more powerful. Bo Jackson ripped out his own hip out of the socket because he was too powerful.
Yeah, when you start to climb that upper limit of what you're capable of. I remember that reminded me of a conversation you and I had, Troy, about my training when we were talking about, physical efficiency. Yeah. So when you have someone whose training age is high and you're really good at what you're doing. So like if I can load up close to 3 times my body weight on my back, well, I can't be training that hard 6 days a week. Like it's a little bit of a cliche, because I feel like people who say this are like, I don't need to say what they're like, but the guys who say, you can only progress what you recover from. But it is true when you get to a certain level where recovery becomes more important, because now you're trying to improve by like fractions of a percent. You got to rest. And I think what a lot of people think, and maybe it's something that just comes with time, but I feel like when we get newer athletes, they come to the gym and they're like, oh yeah, let's get going. No, this is extremely hard training. There's a reason why everyone sees really good results from our gym, because we train really, really hard. But with that, you do need to recover. Like it is a full-time sport when you're training with us, and maybe we need to be more flexible and kind of allow for room. I don't know. We can talk about that later, but I think, we're trying to build the best. We're trying to get the most out of our athletes. That's what it is. The cost is you have to take care of yourself. You have to recover. I remember we talk about it sometimes where it's kind of like a fine line that Troy and I walk sometimes with our athletes, because it's you don't want to be overbearing in people's lifestyles where, you get college guys back. You went out last night and now you blew something. Well, you did roll the dice. You gambled and lost. So yeah, that's a bit of like a hardo stance, but also I don't think you haven't earned the privilege to be able to do that responsibly. You don't know what you're capable of. You go out,
or like, why aren't I running faster this week? Well, did you go out last night? Yeah. Okay. Like, I don't know. I'm not mad at you. Like, that's fine. That's your choice. Like, you can go out and whatever, but understand, like, if you're going to go out the night before a speed session and you're probably not going to run faster. Like, that's just, you're not built like that. Sorry. Like,
yeah, it is a kind of, I don't know. You'd think it's common sense, but I think a lot of things are common sense that, that's why we have the gym, because there are things that I've thought that are common sense. And Troy goes, all these people don't know this. All right, I guess we'll teach them. Like, geez. But yeah, you have to take care of yourself. or at least you have to find what works for you. Like there are times I do sprints. Maybe I had a couple drinks the night before. I'm not running faster. I'm not going to lose my mind. I'm going to say, I didn't hit the PR. Obviously, I didn't hit the PR. Like, it wasn't like, yeah. Like, I'm not going to get pissed. Like, oh, it's the training's not working. Like, no, like, I just dig a little bit deeper, right? Like, dial it in a little bit more. Like, if you're trying to get that result, do everything you can do. But that also comes with, well, I just need to work harder. That actually was one of my questions. When did you realize working hard wasn't enough? This kind of just segued right into it. Like working hard can solve almost a lot of your problems. For the vast majority of athletes, hard ass work is the solution for the majority. Is going to be how you accomplish most of your goals. However, hard ass recovery is going to be that next like 5%. If hard ass work gets you 95%, you do need to live like super clean and dialed in, especially early on. I was more like when Troy and I first started college sports, I think I was much more adamant about lifestyle earlier on. And I think that set me up to be able to wiggle my recovery and stuff around now. Now I have a pretty good idea if I don't have a great night's sleep or if we have a long day of coaching and we're just kind of beat the next day, you can manage it. Early on, when you don't have, 10 years of high level training adaptations, you need to take care of yourself. And that's like a personal decision. You're rolling the dice, but you have to understand you're rolling the dice. So if it's not that important to you, that's fine. But don't go to Coach Troy and say, I'm all about it. I'm 100% in when you pull in 2 to 3 sessions a week hungover and then you're mad at the program as to why you haven't taken off 2/10 on your flying 10-yard sprint. Like, no, that's ridiculous. So, and that also results in injuries too. Like you don't know it's not just a progress thing. It's more so it's especially true with hamstrings. You don't know that it's a problem until it's a problem. You could get away with your first 7 weeks of training, like, going out with your friends, staying up till 2, 3 a.m. every weekend, and your first 7 weeks of training, you make progress just because you haven't been training hard. Like, yeah, the training works. You're going to get stronger and faster. 6, 7 weeks. It's like, oh, well, I always do this. Like, never been a problem before. Yeah, it's not a problem before until it is a problem. Like, you got away with it. Sick. You're 22 years old. Like you're 19 years old. You were getting away with staying up on TikTok till 2 a.m. for 10 weeks. Like, yeah, you got away with it, but don't kid yourself and think that that's good or that's going to work for training or that's how you get to that top level of performance, or to use a cliche cringe quote, achieve your athletic potential. That's not how it's done, right? It's dialing in every piece and facet of performance training and kind of adopting a lot of like the cliches of you need to recover, you need
and
to
then
sleep,
on the note of like hard work, like I think and Brandon, I feel like you will see this a lot in track, is some coaches just think hard is good when it's not always good. Like when they just beat the shit out of you day after day after day after day, and it's just like, oh, this is good because it's hard. It's like, no, that's not. Yes, hard is good. You're right. Hard is good in some cases, but hard is not always good. And I feel like I feel like in track, that's kind of I don't know this, but I feel like it happens a lot in track where they'll just run the shit out of you, and it's like, all right, well, no one's getting faster. Everyone's fucking dead. Like, this is not good. Like, we're just doing excess amounts of shit, and no one's getting faster. No one's getting stronger because we're so fucking tired because you're making us do hard shit nonstop every fucking day.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common. I call it like junk volume. It's funny. I kind of think, it's kind of going in the opposite direction now. And I start to see programs where I'm like, dude, these people aren't mentally tough. They're not physically tough. Like, I'm like, you do need, and you guys know this, especially it's really relevant with football, especially with the team sport. You're partially building a culture, so you do need, in that gen prep phase, you do need sometimes to do hard work just for the sake of hard work. Maybe it doesn't make you faster, but it makes you a lot tougher. As Troy said, you can't do that year round.
There's a time and place for it.
Exactly. There's a time and the place, beginning of the off season, yeah, let's kill these people. Let's build a culture. Let's get them conditioned so that they have the work capacity to do these things later on, and frankly, so that they have the mental toughness to compete. That's a huge component, but you can't do it year round. Interestingly, I kind of used the approach of where I just thought more equals better. That worked for me for most of my collegiate career, frankly, until it didn't. And that's when I realized that it didn't work anymore. By the time my senior year, I mean, part of it was COVID. It was kind of like the whack COVID year, but like eventually I started running really freaking slow. And I was like, it worked. And it was probably because I was getting older. You know what I mean? I was a redshirt senior. So I was like 23. So I was at the end of my peak youthfulness, maybe in terms of recovery. I don't know. It's hard to say. There was a lot of variables. But at a certain point, I just kept working harder and harder. Always would I've told this story before, always would sneak weight on during the power cleans, ignore the percentages, and the coaches would get mad at me. In retrospect, they were correct. But yeah, it worked for 4 or 5 years until it didn't work. I remember I was tired all the time. I was running terribly. I actually got a blood test. All my hormones were completely tanked. My body had pretty much shut down. So frankly, hard work equal better. It's something that everyone's gone through. You guys have gone through it, doing 10 by 10s. Everyone does it. It's almost like inevitable. It's not necessarily, I don't want to say it's the worst thing when you're, 18 or 19 years old and you can do that. I mean, I used to jump and run on concrete constantly. I mean, you guys still have people doing it on asphalt, but I did it all the time, excessively, because you can recover when you're younger. But to answer that question, man, it works until it doesn't. And then when it doesn't work, it hits you hard, because then that's when the mental aspect comes in and you're like, holy shit, what do I do now?
Well, that's something that I like that we do, that Troy's done a really good job of, that I've always been a fan of, is devising ways, like you mentioned, that psychological hard work piece. And this will be the last thing. Wow, we filled this hour up fast.
Good hour, though.
Yeah, we could probably break this off and do another one. This may be Wednesday.
Yeah.
But is finding ways to get that psychological, that absurdly unreasonable hard work done in ways that are safe. Top linear speed is not necessarily the time to be running to get that hard work mentality. That's a time to chill out and hit your numbers, dial in your technique, relax, and hit your numbers and kind of evaluate how training's going so far. The time to do the hard work is when you're strapped up to a bar doing shrugs to failure, or when we do tsunami lunges, where you're doing reverse lunges until you feel like you're going to throw up. Those are the times to do hard work. You're not going to get injured. That's really, really hard, and it's building muscles and strength that you need. So that's the time to do it. Hill sprints are a good time to just go, because you're not elongating your hamstrings. Your risk of injury is much lower on an incline. Lighter benching too. There's rowing is a good one to do really hard, because your back can never really be too strong. But there are times and places to go really, really hard. Sprint work is not necessarily one that the more is more concept takes. Usually with lifting, you can do more lifting as long as it's
especially early on.
Yeah, especially early on, as long as it's more of a volume deal. More is not more when you're doing heavy box squats and you're just grinding yourself in. Your nervous system is at a point of failure. But for a good, we don't really like to use percentages per se, but you're at 60-70%. That's a good working weight where you can do hard ass work and get a lot of positive results from it. Once you get up to the max effort, it's you're playing with fire, and you're going to see results because you're probably a younger athlete, and you'll see results short term, acute positive adaptation, but then it will catch up to you and bad things will happen. But to wrap up the call, don't baby yourself. Don't victimize yourself. You're not fragile. We'll probably say this a million times as it relates to contact injuries or non-contact injuries. You will experience strains, pulls, and discomfort training. If you're squatting heavy and jumping, I think I said this when we had Rainer on, you're either going to feel pain or discomfort from acute injuries or soreness or inflammation from training really hard, or you're going to feel acute injuries and soreness and pain from not training hard and being weak, and then you're screwed. So would you rather be in discomfort and weak and not able to do anything about it, or discomfort because you're pushing really hard and you have power in your own like you have the power to fix it and move forward, because it's kind of inevitable. And again, it's just picking your poison. Do you want to be kind of uncomfortable because you're pushing really hard, or do you want to be uncomfortable because you're not pushing hard enough? And I would always advocate for, like, the discomfort is going to happen. Like, everyone out there, whether you're an athlete, coach, or just, a person that's listening, your body is not going to feel great all of the time. Most of the time, maybe, I don't know, depending on who you are. Like, discomfort is common. You're not going to feel 100%. And the biggest thing is, like, you don't need to feel 100% to perform well, hit PRs, and train. Like, are you so, I'm sure I've gone on this rant. Are you so, like, precious that your body needs to feel 100% for you to do your top speed sprint workout or for you to hit your PR? No, that's ridiculous. Like, you play football, you run, like, if you have a track meet and you don't feel 100%, well, like, suck it up and run your event. Don't blow out your hamstring, but suck it up and run your event. It's the same thing with training. Like, I'm really tired today. Okay, do it. Like, train. Like, you're like, it's whatever. It's the same. It's why I don't see this that much, but I know that there's a sentiment out there where, like, the hardest part about starting training and exercise is just starting, because you have less energy because you're so sedentary. But there is truth to that. And it's the same truth with discomfort. You have back pain because you don't move. Granted, on the other side, as you move, you'll have some back pain because it's hard, but it's a much more easy issue to resolve than, like, being hunched over and, like, calcifying in this, like, sedentary wally blob state where you're just hiding from pain. Or, like, my shoulder hurts, so I'm not going to do shoulder things, or I'm not going to, like, train around it. Not the way to do it, dude. Like, not the way to go about it. My back hurts, so I'm going to take everything easier for the next 2 weeks or the rest of my life. And it's like, okay, you just took, like, find an excuse that makes you feel good about not pushing yourself harder. Go ahead. There's plenty of them out there. Like, you can do it. Don't. Silly person. Don't do that. What do I know, though? What do I know? Great. Yeah, there's a few
good.
auto rants. Yeah, we'll have Christian.
No, that was
That's
good.
good.
This is being recorded on Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and to all the pseudo fathers, coaches, strength coaches, position coaches, masculine figures that help guide people. Because just as important as it is to have, mother figures, I think especially in today's world, it's really important to have father figures, whether they be biological or not. Like, it's important. So no matter what your situation is, you got someone that's probably acting as a father figure to you, and you should thank them and reach out and tell them that you appreciate them, because that stuff is arguably more important than benching or squatting or running fast. So there you go. We'll wrap it up. It's close, but it's close. You can learn a lot from a barbell too. There you go. All right, wrapping it up. Rest up.